When I married Emma, I felt like I had won the lottery of life. We were the kind of couple that people enjoyed watching from the sidelines. The couple who had it all. We bought a house in a quiet suburb of Chicago. A neat lawn, a white picket fence, a dog named Charlie who always dragged my sneakers into the backyard. Emma worked as a teacher and I worked in sales at a large IT company. Everything seemed right, even perfect. Our friends joked that we were the living embodiment of the American dream. The first few years were like a movie. We cooked dinner together, went to the lake on weekends, went for evening runs. We made plans. Kids, travel, old age, where we would sit on the porch drinking lemonade. And I believed that's how it would be. But over time, life stopped sounding like a melody. Everything became predictable, like a playlist you listen to too often. I would get up at 6, pour coffee, grab the same mug with a crack in the handle, and drive to the office, where endless reports and phone calls awaited me. In the evening, Netflix, takeout, occasional sex, and the obligatory "I love you" before bed, which felt more like a task in my daily planner than a genuine feeling. We didn't fight. We just stopped being alive. Emma still smiled, but I could see that her smile no longer had the sparkle that once lit up everything around her. I tried to bring back the old days. Flowers, surprises, conversations late into the night, but it felt like renovating an old house where the foundation is already cracking, only you don't want to admit it yet. 10 years passed. Charlie grew older, the paint peeled off the fence, and I found myself thinking more and more often that I was living on inertia. Everything around me seemed to have frozen. Habits, routes, even our kisses. They became part of a ritual, like saying good night to a child you put to bed. At the time, I didn't know that this predictability was brewing a storm. That the most dangerous thing is not hatred or fatigue, but the quiet indifference that comes when you stop feeling. I can't say that everything collapsed in one day. It wasn't like an explosion, more like a slow fading. First, you just get tired. Then you stop feeling. And then one day you catch yourself looking at your own life, as if from the outside, like a viewer who already knows how the movie will end but can't leave the theater. I woke up in the morning and felt as if I wasn't there. There was no inspiration, no anger, no joy. Just emptiness. At the office, I sat among young men and women, all with burning eyes, ambitions, plans for startups and travel. I listened to their conversations and realized that we seemed to be living in different worlds. They were on the rise, and I was on autopilot. I used to be sure that maturity meant confidence and stability. But it turned out that maturity often comes with the feeling that life is passing you by. I was valued for my experience and ability to solve complex problems, but not for my ideas. I became reliable. And reliable is a word that sounds nice on a resume, but kills you from the inside if it becomes your only definition. Sometimes I looked at myself in the mirror in the morning. The reflection was a man with tired eyes, light stubble, and wrinkles around his mouth. I tried to remember the last time I saw excitement, a spark in those eyes. But I couldn't. Instead, I saw a man who was aging too quickly, who seemed to have given up without even realizing there was a fight going on. At home, I also felt like I was in the way. Emma lived her own life, school, homework, friends, books. I lived mine. Our conversations became short and mundane. Did you walk Charlie? Who's ordering dinner? Did you pay the bills? We still lived together, but it was as if we were in parallel universes where our paths never crossed. One evening, I came home from work and stood in the dark outside the bedroom door for a long time, listening to Emma typing something on her laptop. I wanted to go in, hug her, tell her that I was tired, that it was hard for me. But I couldn't. A wall had grown between us, invisible, but impenetrable. At that moment, I realized for the first time that I had lost not my wife, not my passion, but myself. And what was most frightening was that I didn't even know where to start to get myself back. It happened on one of those evenings when everything seems the same. The end of the quarter, endless reports, a meeting that dragged on longer than necessary. Afterwards, my colleagues suggested going to a bar, just to de-stress, as they said. I didn't want to. I usually went home, ate pizza, drank beer in front of the TV, and fell asleep to the sound of the news. But for some reason, I didn't want to go home that evening. The bar was typical for the city center. Dim lighting, neon lights, music that was too loud, the smell of beer and perfume. We sat down at a long table, laughed, and discussed our bosses. And then she appeared, Jenna. A girl from marketing. Young, confident, with a slight smile that seemed to say, "I see everything, but I don't judge anything." She sat down next to me because there wasn't enough room, a trivial thing, but then I replayed that moment over and over in my head. We started talking. She laughed at my jokes, asked questions, looked me straight in the eye. Not like a colleague, but like someone who was genuinely interested in what I had to say. It was a strange contrast to how I had felt in recent years. I wouldn't say it was love. No. It was something else, a sharp, almost physical sensation. I exist again. As if someone had turned on the light after a long darkness. She said, "You're probably the kind of person who always has everything under control, right?" And there was admiration in her voice. I didn't even want to argue. When she touched my hand, just by accident, laughing at something, a current ran through my skin. And I realized that I missed that feeling. Not Jenna. Myself. The man who could be interesting, alive, needed. We chatted until the others left. I walked her to her car, and we exchanged numbers, supposedly for work. But we both knew it wasn't about work. At home, when I entered the bedroom, Emma was already asleep. I quietly sat down on the edge of the bed and stared at her for a long time in the semi-darkness. She looked so familiar and distant at the same time. And there was a feeling in my chest, not guilt, not yet, but something like anxiety. It was as if I was standing on the edge of something I shouldn't look at, but couldn't look away from. That night, for the first time in a long time, I didn't fall asleep right away. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, and felt something inside me slowly awakening. It all started with innocent messages. We wrote to each other on Slack, first about work issues, then just joking around, then sharing stories. It seemed harmless. The kind of work friendship that's easy to justify. I told myself that nothing bad was happening, that I just enjoyed the attention, and I had a right to feel alive. But boundaries blur quickly. One "how are you?" turns into "I can't stop thinking about you." One coffee turns into dinner. And dinner turns into a kiss that no one seemed to plan. It all happened so naturally that it didn't even seem like a mistake. Rather, it was as if something inevitable had finally happened. I remember the first night. A hotel near the office, a cheap room, the smell of cheap wine, and her hair smelling of coconut shampoo. I remember my heart pounding in my chest, not from passion, but from fear. Fear that it was all wrong. But at the same time, there was a strange, intoxicating feeling. I was feeling something again. I was alive. We both pretended to be in control of the situation. That it was just a flirtation, a temporary escape, nothing more. But the further it went, the harder it was to pretend. I started checking my phone every 5 minutes, waiting for messages, looking for reasons to meet up. Every little thing, every notification from her caused a flash, the kind I hadn't felt in a long time. And at home, everything became unbearably calm. Emma smiled, talked about work, asked what to buy at the supermarket. I looked at her and felt like something inside me was breaking in two, between who I am and who I pretend to be. Sometimes I tried to convince myself that the reason was in me, not in her. That it wasn't about betrayal, but about searching for meaning. That at home everything had long since changed, that we had simply grown apart. But somewhere deep down I knew the truth. Everything I said was an excuse. Jenna wasn't the solution, she was a mirror. In her, I saw not a new love, but my own emptiness wrapped in a beautiful shell. After one of our meetings, I was driving home on the highway, and the city lights were reflected in the rearview mirror. I looked at them and suddenly realized that I had lost my bearings. Everything that used to be important, honesty, family, trust, became something distant, like a past you don't want to remember. I didn't know how long I could live on two fronts. I didn't know what I really wanted. But I knew one thing: there was no turning back. When everything came out, there were no scenes, no shouting, no broken plates. Only silence. The kind of silence in which you can hear everything you've built over the years collapsing. I came home late that night. Emma was sitting in the kitchen. My phone was in front of her. Open. I knew right away what had happened. She didn't look at me, she just held her cup, her hands shaking. "Is it true?" she asked quietly. I couldn't lie. I just nodded. Then there was emptiness. No dramatic phrases, tears, or accusations. Just a look. A look that said it all: pain, fatigue, disappointment. I tried to explain something, to talk about the crisis, about how I didn't want it to be this way, that I don't understand how it all happened. But my words fell into a void, without touching her. Then she said, "I knew that things had changed between us. But I thought we were just tired. That it could be fixed. And you chose not to fix it. You just left, without getting up from your seat." I wanted to touch her hand, but she pulled away. And that movement was stronger than any blow. That night, I slept on the sofa. Or rather, I didn't sleep. I just lay there staring at the ceiling. The house felt like a stranger's. Even Charlie didn't come near me, as if he understood everything too. In the morning, Emma packed her things and left to stay with her sister. She didn't slam the door or say goodbye. She just closed the door behind her. And that's when I really felt like I had fallen. I didn't just lose my wife, I lost my foundation. Everything that defined me as a person, loyalty, honesty, respect, crumbled like dry sand between my fingers. At work, I continued to smile, joke, and pretend that everything was under control. But inside, it was as if the lights had been turned off. I caught myself thinking that even the music in the car sounded different, unbearably sincere. Any song about love or loss hit me in the same place. I realized that I hadn't betrayed Emma. I had betrayed the man I wanted to be. The man who believed in simple things, in honesty, in kindness, in the fact that love can be preserved if you try hard enough. I destroyed all of that with my own hands. And now all that was left was to watch as nothing grew from the ashes. Now I go to a therapist. Once a week, on Tuesdays, to a small office overlooking a parking lot. It smells of coffee and citrus, and there's a painting of the ocean on the wall, as if to remind me that even storms end eventually. For the first few sessions, I just sat there in silence. It was difficult to talk, not because I didn't know where to start, but because every word felt like a sentence. I looked at my hands, at the ring I was still wearing, and thought how strange it was. One gesture, one decision could so easily erase a decade of life. Over time, I started talking about how I felt like a nobody, how I was afraid of getting old, of losing interest, in the eyes of others and in my own. I admitted that the affair wasn't about Jenna. It was about emptiness, about trying to prove that I still meant something, that someone could look at me and see not a husband or a colleague, but a man. My therapist is a woman in her 50s with a soft voice and stern eyes. She said once, "Mike, you weren't looking for a woman. You were looking for confirmation that you exist." That phrase stuck with me. I thought about it for a long time. And the more I thought about it, the clearer it became: she was right. Everything I was trying to find outside myself, I should have been looking for inside myself all along. Now I try not to run away from the silence. It still scares me, especially in the evenings when I come home to an empty house. But I'm learning to listen to it, not to fill it with noise. I walk with Charlie, cook simple dinners, sometimes call Emma. We talk calmly without reproach. She is no longer my wife, but probably for the first time in a long time, she is someone I truly wish happiness for. Sometimes I think, is it possible to start all over again? Not to go back, but to start from scratch, but with an understanding of the price of every mistake. I don't know if it will work, but I know for sure that now I am not looking for salvation in the eyes of others. I am still learning to be myself, without a role, without approval, without illusions. And maybe that's the very maturity I've been avoiding.